could I share? Do you have any more observations of the scoring or predictions? Because I'd love, this might be the perfect segue to what I was telling you about faction
Yeah,
life and how we respond, the
yeah, go ahead.
analogy that I have. So I've been noticing more and more that life in a faction and life in this game is very similar on some levels. Now, every just know preface, every illustration breaks down when you argue it to an absurd level, right? So this is merely for comparison purposes. But I'm seeing that the way we fly on the commercial airline is very similar to the way we play this game. And
Okay.
particularly like faction life, right? That go with me, if you will, on a little illustrative journey, Lee, where I think your faction is like an airplane, right?
Okay.
And you've got maybe a leader, co-leaders, right? They are, for the most part, the pilots on the plane. They're responsible for helping
Okay.
everyone reach a destination. And let's say that
Hmm.
destination is, you know, uh, maxing the MLC or
Hmm.
um, doing well on the leaderboard in your weekend event, right? Say a flash feud, right? Helping coordinate things. And so they don't always control the flight plan. I think that comes from the game itself, right? The flight plan, the panels that the pilots use, they're using the same, right? They're it's the game itself, and it's the MLC, and it's the blogs, and it's the things that come out. But I think you also have officers and enforcers in your faction, right? And sometimes we wonder, well, what are those roles do? Are they just to be mean to people in the chat? Or are they just to like keep us all in line? But really, I think they're there to help make the experience, um, to be helpful and to help keep the passengers, everyone else in the faction, comfortable and enjoying the flight, right? And I think you have in the faction, everyone is a passenger. Even if you are a flight attendant, you're still a passenger. Even if you are a pilot, you're still a passenger on this airliner, right? And so, if you've flown recently, you notice there are different kinds of passengers. There's
Hmm.
like a first class area, right? Those
Hmm.
are people that have spent quite a bit more than the people like me who are flying in, coach or business class. Maybe spend a little bit, right? You're a little bit more. You're in business class, so
Less Bray Wyatt's on the plane.
um, yeah. And you know what? The perks are different in those two
Yeah.
categories of passengers,
Hmm.
right? Sometimes they have their own, a bigger screen up there. Sometimes they have a little, a meal, or sometimes they're given like a complimentary drink or something. It's because they've paid for a premium experience. And so their flight is going to be more comfortable and less uncomfortable than my experience in coach. I'm going to have less leg room. It's going to be a little more crowded. It's not going to be, the perks aren't going to be as fancy. It's going to be a little more challenging. I'm going to be uncomfortable in my seat more so than they would, especially in the big boy recliner that they get, right? Um, and so I was thinking about this faction life and faction as an airplane. One of the
Hmm.
worst things that can happen on a flight is that there's a crying baby on the
I thought you were
plane.
gonna say it crashes, but okay, yeah,
A
let's go with Crying
screaming,
Baby.
crying baby on the flight, right? And I'm not calling anyone out there a baby. I'm just saying that kind of noise is an annoyance, right?
Hmm.
That kind of hearing someone else in pain is something we typically try to avoid. We try to put our earbuds in, we try to watch the movie, turn up the volume, whatever it is that we're doing. And we probably all have one of those faction members who's the crier. Um, and how do we engage with them, right? Or do we not? I also think, you know, when you get into this comparison of a faction as like an airplane, Lee, um, you have the jobs of these leaders, the jobs of officers, enforcers, flight attendants, flight crew. Like when problems arise, this new MLC is a great example. When a problem arises, right? When they foresee turbulence, their job is to still communicate with the passengers and ensure them that everything's okay and that they'll get through it, right? The last thing you want is a flight attendant to get on and say, "This is horrible. We're experiencing turbulence. We could crash. This is right." Like you want them to be like, "Oh, attention, this is your captain speaking. We seem to be cruising at an altitude and we're running into a storm. And so, what we're going to do is we're going to try our best to go around it. But we ask you to fasten your seatbelts and sit tight for the next few minutes." Right. And you have a calming voice that comes over the air. And so, I was thinking about that, like my role as an officer in our faction, the kind of leader that we have, the kind of leaders that I've seen in other factions, the kind of, but like, how does that illustration? I've done a lot of talking for the last few minutes. Does that hold up? Is that fair to say that, like, on some levels, there's really a comparison there? And ultimately, are there some lessons? Are there some leadership lessons or faction lessons that we might gain from this comparison?
Yeah, I mean, so you said we, just for people like, oh, we've been talking about this for a while. I'm planning it. Like literally 5 minutes before we went live, Rusty was like, "Ooh, I've got something I want to throw at you here as we go."
I
So,
hand wrote
so
some notes, Lee. Look at this. I've got
nice
a notepad, and it
on
says
something.
"Faction Life Illustration Airplane," and I just started jotting down. This is a Magic the Gathering
I was gonna
score
say
pad,
that's
by
like
the way.
magic logos or something.
Yeah,
I've seen them
yeah,
on my wife's decks. Anyway,
yeah.
yeah, no, I think there's some comparisons and parables that go over well with that. I definitely hadn't thought about this before, but it is like, okay, so the airplane, the reason why that's an apt analogy is we're all kind of in this same box, like, and we're breathing, so to speak, the same air, or
Yeah.
we've got all that. Plus, like one of the ones you maybe didn't mention is like if there is somebody, it's even one of the commercials right now that that's out. It shows like a girl sitting in her seat, and then the girl in front of her like fluffs her hair back over her screen, and the person behind puts his shoes up there, and like someone
Oh,
sticks their gum, or
what about the
like,
toes coming through the seat? That is probably the worst.
you know what we call that?
Oh,
We call that the seat worm.
oh. I wish I had some spray hand sanitizer to like.
Psst, psst. Yeah. Or what you do is you just turn around and lick them, and then they run.
Oh,
Just joking.
start drawing on
Anyway,
their toe with your Sudoku pen. You're doing your puzzle
yeah.
and you make a little smiley face on the toe. Do not take your
Uh,
shoes off on an airplane. If this is
oh,
the only
that's not okay.
takeaway from today's episode, please do not take your shoes off on an airplane if you're listening
There
to
you
me.
go.
Leave them
Well,
on.
but the experience of one impacts the experience of all. Like, and maybe
Also,
maybe I'm 30 rows back, and in row 5 somebody's having an issue. I don't really feel that so much because I'm not quite as close to them. But
yeah.
the same way, like, yeah, if somebody throws a fit, if somebody's rude to the stewardesses, if somebody's blah, 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 like, yeah, all of those things impact everyone. And yeah, the officers as stewardesses, stewards, that makes sense.
Flight
The
attendant is the PC term, I
Oh, sorry,
believe.
flight attendant.
Yeah, that's
That's
the
right.
old 80s term is stewardess. So
Yeah, or
it's,
steward.
you can't say that anymore.
But that's not fair because I've always wanted to be a steward of Gondor. Oh dang. This is Lord of the Rings subtleties
There's a
and
lot of
magic
words you can't say
subtleties.
anymore that we used to say when we were
The-
kids, but
oh yeah,
we
we
won't go
learned
there.
stuff.
We won't go there.
Anyways, but no, I
Um,
think I think that is an apt analogy, and I think that's we all chose to take the flight, but we don't always choose to who gets on the plane with us. We're all trying to go towards a specified destination, but the way one experiences it with turbulent. Yeah, turbulent. I mean, yeah, it's the more I think about this, the more I applaud the fact that you thought about this.
Well, sometimes my smooth brain yields incredible results. Let me throw this your way, right? Because
Okay.
I think there is potentially a growing gap. Refute me if you feel otherwise, between the spenders and the non-spenders, or the low
Hmm.
spenders and the high spenders.
Hmm.
If we're on an airplane, right?
Sure.
One of the worst things I can do is try to peek through that curtain and see what all of the first class has that I don't have.
Hmm.
It will make my flight miserable. All I will
Interesting.
be able to think about is what I'm not getting. They're getting steak tartare and champagne, and they're in there are planes now where the seat reclines fully into a bed, and they give a blanket and a pillow, and
Wow.
real silverware. They're using like real cutlery, while
Wow.
while I'm opening a can of Pringles I had to pay $4 for on the flight,
And
right?
it's this big.
Yeah, yeah, the little micro can.
Right.
But like, and I've done this. The worst flights I've ever had was when
Hmm.
like international from New York City to Tel Aviv. I made the
Hmm.
mistake of seeing what was up at the front of the plane,
Yeah.
and I was miserable. I tried to use their restroom, and they told
Hmm.
me, I don't think so, pal. And they kicked me out, and I saw luxury flying that I had never seen before.
Hmm.
And all I could think about was like, this is this is like so wrong. Now I've been segregated, right? Social economic polarity. This is class warfare. Like all the
Yeah.
crazy things that I tell myself, right? I'm making these conclusions of like, I don't like being pushed into a different category of human. Am I not the same, as
Sure.
them? Do I not count? Do I not matter the same way they matter? And for me, my injustice meter began to rise, when in
Yeah.
reality they had paid thousands of dollars more for that experience than I had paid.
Yeah.
Thousands.
I
Their
think
ticket was
we're
probably $5,000 more than my ticket was.
good Lord.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
Well, I think where
First
that
class to
that
Tel
gets
Aviv from New York, that's like a
oh,
$12,000 plane ticket.
wow. Okay.
Yeah, yeah, that's
It,
expensive.
right. Well, I think where that analogy on this part of it breaks down is now we start take or not breaks down, I guess we further it is we take into account the airline themselves. Like we're talking about the people on the plane. What about the people who make and manage and run the plane? And they intentionally put where the front door you enter, you have to walk through first class in order to get to your seats because they want you to see
Just rub
what
your
you could
nose in it.
have.
Just rub your
They
nose in it a little
want you
bit.
to see, oh, if you spend that extra
Yeah,
5,000,
right.
you could do this. And it's like, ooh, okay, well,
Like the
but
prize wall sometimes makes me feel that way.
yeah, talk about when I got red faced. I still
Like the
don't like the
brag
way
room,
prize walls
and a
go.
faction of brag room can make you feel
Yeah,
that way.
it
You know,
can.
um, gosh, just looking at your leaderboard can make you feel that way.
Yeah, and it benefits the company, the airline, that makes the plane for you to see that because they want you to want those perks because the way that you get those perks is spending. Now, we have said on this podcast before, I don't ever begrudge Scopely for pushing spending to whatever degree they do because that's the only way that the game keeps going. That's
Right,
how they make money.
right.
Um, but you're right. If I see, like, okay, this last month is a good example. Out of all the content creators, I got the least new characters. Not talking about from the Oopsie,
Oh
but
man.
of the weekend
No, Davey
characters.
got less because he took a break
Well,
from the
Davey
game.
didn't
So
play.
Davey,
That's
Davey was on a hiatus. So you're ahead of
so
Davey. Okay,
okay. Well,
there's always
thank you.
somebody
See, it's
behind
good
you.
perspective. Thank you for being an encourager as an officer, Rusty. I appreciate that. But Out of all the content creators,
Mm,
I got the least new characters,
right.
and I'm sitting there looking at this premium gauntlet blitz that was out this week, at the start of the MLC, and
Right.
I'm one character short. If I had gotten Becky,
Right.
if I had gotten Roman, if I had gotten
Yeah.
Bray, if I had gotten Bianca, I'm sitting here with only Shinsuke, even though I did 5 megapole. Oh my gosh, did I do five? Wow.
And on the air your laundry here.
Okay, well, it was public. It was a
I
public.
know.
Everybody could see
Yeah.
the
Oh, we did it
streams.
live on stream.
So
So yeah, there's a public
yeah,
record of this. Yes,
that's
we did
right.
5+ megapoles.
Yeah, I mean the Bray one was that's the angry. I mean that's the anyway. But yeah, I mean, so I could very easily like even you, Rusty, who often says like, "Oh, you have all these characters, Lee, that I don't have." You got more characters last month and this month than
The
I.
Judgment Day runs Monday Night Raw.
So I could very easily look at what I don't have,
That's right.
and I could very easily look at first class and go, how dare I not get that? Or
Yeah.
I could recognize like I did what I could. I'm happy with what I got, and I'm gonna enjoy the flight. Because
Yeah.
we're still gonna make it to Tel Aviv together, right? We're all gonna make it to Tel Aviv unless something catastrophic happens. So why am I upset that maybe I had a little leg cramp during part of it? I mean, I get it, it's personal, but
Well,
yeah.
and here's the other thing, right? And I totally agree with you. So on one hand, we have the role of a passenger, right? And we're responsible for our own level of contentness. And on the other hand, you and I think many of us that might be listening out there are officers, are leaders, whether you have the title of leader in your faction or not. If you're an influencer in your, if you're a voice someone listens to in your faction, you are a leader.
Hmm.
If people take your information and say thank you or that was helpful, you are a leader, because leadership is influence. Leadership is not title. Leadership is not position. Leadership is not authority. Oh, look at that. 21 irrefutable laws of leadership. So I would say,
Leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. Direct quote.
nice. I quoted Maxwell. I didn't even know it. That's incredible. But I would say this, right? So if I think we are a podcast and a show that leaders listen to, and I think they share our information with others in their faction, it's important to remember your tone, your timing. All of those things
Ooh,
really matter. How
you
you
need a third T for alliteration. Your
your
tone, your timing.
your temperament. I don't know
Ooh,
your
okay. I was gonna say
yeah.
tutelage, but that was stupid. That doesn't fit.
Yeah. So for example, if the flight attendant got on the PA and was like, "Oh my gosh, there's turbulence. This is totally unexpected. We're in trouble, everybody." You have just incited a panic on
Mm,
board. And the pilot is going to be going, "What are they doing?
mm,
Keep everybody calm until we figure this out. I'm gonna figure out a plan over, above, around, or through the storm. And we're gonna figure that out. Behind the scenes, come behind the curtain and let's talk." Right. And so then you have all the other flight attendant. If you ever hear the boom, boom, and then they pick up the phone, they're
yeah.
communicating privately with the pilot or privately flight attendant to flight attendant. And they're not telling the rest of us what they're saying. But it's usually not, "Hey, how you doing?" "Oh, I'm doing good too." "Yeah." No, it's usually like, "Hey, I'm going to turn on the fasten seatbelt line because what I can see coming up is going to be a little uncomfortable. We're going to have to discontinue the beverage service at this time."
Hmm.
Right? So they're having a conversation of, we got to get everybody through this, and we got to keep the peace. We got to keep everybody calm. We got to keep everybody enjoying their flight. We got to keep them tuned in to their device, right? Watching the movie, drinking the drink, drinking the ginger ale, having fun, smiling, being comfortable, regardless of their seat on the plane. We want everybody just to have a great experience. And that's some of the burden of leadership, right? That's some of the burden of influence, is that
Mm,
your voice is always amplified.
yeah.
Your voice, your words are words that affect others. So when you're positive, it affects others. When you're not positive or negative, it affects others. And Lee, you know something I've really learned? I don't know if this came from one of your leadership books or not. Something I've learned is that the good things that I do, the people that listen to me, they begin to do the things I do in excess, the good, they begin to just do in moderation. They begin to do a little bit. The good things I do
Mm,
a lot of, they do a little bit of. But the bad things I do a little bit of, they begin to do a lot of. So
mm-hmm.
if I'm negative, or if I'm complaining, or if I'm pessimistic, or if I'm trolling, or if I'm cussing, or if I'm doing something that's because of my status as an influencer and a leader, not, and I'm not just talking about, I'm talking about life as a
Yeah.
dad, as a leader in my organization at work. If
Mm,
the bad things I do, if I'm lazy a little, they will be lazy a lot. If
mm-hmm.
I'm obsessed with my phone, and then my kids will be phone zombies, screen zombies, right? So I have to always be aware of my effect on others, and that, like I'm saying, I just want a little bit of good to happen. So I better be doing a lot of good. I better be
Mm.
over communicating the positive if I want them to feed back a little positive. Right?
Yep.
You got thoughts on that? I mean, you're an incredible leader. You've read books on
Thank you.
this. I've not.
I've read
I
books. That yeah,
I've only heard
that's
from
about the
others
best
about
I've
it.
done. So, couple things that you're hitting on there that all tie into this. Yeah, as a leader, so one of the things I've learned in leadership is the further you get in leadership, the less freedom you have. And I don't mean that in a
Mm,
restrictive way, but like the things I could say when I'm not leading versus what I need to say and hold myself to as a leader are very different. The things I could do, the things that I could, etc. And similar to the principle that you say, I tell our leaders all the time, if you set the bar here, the average person will meet you here, not way down here. Let's not short circuit people or
sure.
disbelieve in them.
Assume the
The
best.
average
Yeah.
person will hit here. So if you're wanting to see these results, you need to hit here so that they will hit there, right? Like you need to go above and beyond. Another one, Leadership Summit last year, someone said some words that I still rumble with because my words of affirmation is not like that's not native to me. I'm not good at it.
Hmm.
And see, I actually just proved it by even saying those words out loud because I just not affirmed myself. But the thing that he said is, look, if you as a leader are trying to create a positive culture, you need to imagine the level of encouragement that you're giving people to the farthest degree you could possibly take it until you're about to go, oh, that's too much, and then double it, and they will
Wow.
start feeling it.
Wow.
Go the farthest you can to appreciate people and then double it. And now you're thinking, oh my gosh, that's so rough. That's so hard. Again, let's recognize you don't get to be the captain of the flight by sitting on your phone on the weekends.
I'm
You
the
get to be
captain.
the
No.
captain of the flight by study, by proving yourself, by stepping above. It's not leadership as elitism. Leadership is earned, leadership is influence, but leadership is also when you are in positions of leadership, it comes with a cost, a higher cost than sitting at the back of the plane and doing, I don't care what happens. Like if I fall asleep on the flight, it's not going to crash. The
So
pilot falls asleep on the flight, we're in trouble.
let me say this. This is an interesting observation based on what you just said. The most uncomfortable seat in the plane is the flight attendants.
Oh, yeah.
The
Yeah, that is
most
true.
uncomfortable seat in the plane is the person responsible for all the other people.
Huh. Interesting.
They can't afford to sit on their laurels. They're not
Yeah.
given a comfortable seat on purpose. They have
Yeah.
to stay on their feet. And the little flop down hatch thing that they sit on is I don't know that I'd fit on it. First of all, if I did, I don't know that it would sustain me. But
I
second
wouldn't.
of all, like I think that's a great snapshot of leadership. Period. They're like
Yeah.
the seat of the leader kind of stinks. You don't get the cozy. You're not in first class. You're
Yeah.
not. You're not a passenger like everyone else. You're
Yeah.
always on the move. You're always on the go. You're always attending to other people's needs and thoughts and whims and concerns and questions.
Mm.
I don't have what it takes to be a leader of a faction. Like we've already established this. Like I've said it many times. I will never lead my own faction. I will always be championing and celebrating the leadership of someone else in
Yeah.
our faction because if people were DMing me at 2 a.m. their drama with someone else, somebody else said in the chat, like you better believe that'd be a short-lived experience for both me and them. Because
Yeah.
I just wouldn't respond with the type of leadership that's necessary in that situation. Right.
Mm.
And so being a leader is not for
Mm.
everybody. Certain
No.
levels of leadership are not for everybody.
Right.
Certain levels of the sections of the plane are not for the people that sit in the emergency row have more responsibility. They have to agree to more responsibility to get the extra leg room,
Yep.
right? The people that pay infinitely more to sit in first class have more than I will ever have
Right.
on that flight and in this game.
Yeah.
And in this game, their experience will be different.
Hmm.
That doesn't mean I'm not going to get to my destination. That doesn't mean I'm not going to enjoy my flight. It
Hmm.
doesn't mean I have to be jealous or be mad or be angry or be bitter or be sad that I'm not the one flying the plane or that I'm not the one on the intercom making the announcements or that I'm not the one getting the extra meal or the extra leg room. All I got to think about is my little real estate around me and making
Yeah.
sure that I'm doing what I can do to enjoy it the most. Right?
Hmm. Well, this was a good analogy, Rusty. I didn't know where it was going for a bit, but I've now adopted this as my new paradigm for how we play this game because it just fits so well. So great,
Yeah.
great job. And unfortunately.